Hello, our friends.
Hello there. Welcome back, everybody.
I love hearing that.
Back for more punishment.
Oh,
Whoa.
oh. Well, this one's certainly not going to be punishing, perhaps thought-provoking. And, every now and then it feels to me like we just talked about something, but then when I go and do a search and realize, no, we haven't made a video on that in 2 years. Okay, well, let's incorporate some new items in with what we want to kind of bring up to people's thoughts. Maybe they haven't seen this before, maybe they have. But again, every single one of us is always growing. We're always learning. We never stay the same, and that's the whole point of exploring all these worlds. It's because it's all about growth. It's all about change. It's all about learning. It's all about doing. It's all about being.
And there's just so many layers of the onion. Maybe you do know this information and you ran across it a couple years ago, but now we're going to open up this book again and you needed it today. I mean, just so happens maybe we say something that is going to help you, in so many ways. And that's why we're here. We're here to give some inspiration, we hope.
Absolutely, and we're sharing with you guys things that I just don't see a lot of other channels share, honestly. It's from direct experience because, there's a lot of other channels out there on YouTube and Rumble and Brighteon and Bitchute that will tell you about things such as, life after death. And what they do is they're mostly, not all, because there are some that do have the direct experiences themselves and talk from a more personal point of view, but it's so rare compared to all the channels out there that pull up the same stuff, the quotations of ancient Greeks or delving into, what does the Bible say? What does Buddhism say? What does Hinduism say? What does, this and that say? Socrates and Plato and stuff. Sure, it's all well and good. But what we are doing is, okay, this is what some others have said, but this is what we have experienced. This is what we know because of direct experience. And that's where it's different because, with Cindy and I and many of you, there are so many people out there that are terrified to share their real experiences because they don't want to get labeled as being insane. They don't want to get looked at strangely. Now, things that we would share now that we can share and people will look at and accept mostly without criticism or judgment. Some will judge, some will criticize, some are still deeply entrenched in their programming. But in this day and age, there is an awakening that's undergoing right now due to the increase in energy that we're being exposed to, reawakening a lot within us that we just know that's been dormant, been asleep. This is again due to all the energies, the cosmic energies coming in, the energies coming in from the sun, the fact that we're on our way, we're leaving a dark age, we're heading into a new age. And what is light? You might say a new age of light. What is light? Light's information. Light is knowing. So, again, please do subscribe both channels. And we do want to thank our family members at Patreon and at Ko-Fi, where you could do a one-time donation or monthly to support the channel. Do check out Medicinal Foods. These are great guys. They've been part of the family for at least 5 years, and they have a lot of stuff that you can trust. And again, everybody has to listen to your own guidance, but we know they're not in it for the money. This is just something that they're contributing in their own way. To helping people rise up and restore their health. And do check out more about us on EvolutionaryEnergyArts.com. So when we look at all these different worlds that are out there, all these different worlds, you're probably saying, what worlds? You mean like Mars and Venus and Saturn, all these different planets? Or are you talking more like, Pleiades, Pleiadians, maybe Draconians, maybe Syrians and things like that? Yeah, all that, plus all the worlds that lie within you, because we are all co-creators in this, multiverse, for lack of a better term. I've had one person say, if you can't call it a multiverse, again. these terms are just terms. And in fact, what we've discovered is most beings don't go by names. That's just the way it is. Most beings don't use names out there.
When it comes to talking to other beings and beings talking to beings, they go by vibration. So when you're being spoken to, you know it. So there doesn't need to be a name tagged onto them. So many people want to know the name of their guides. And yes, there are ways to get names. But initially, and this is why I don't get names, because the beings that are talking to me, there's like this instant knowing. So we don't need to do the labeling. There's a whole lot of that when it comes to working in the energy realms and different worlds. It's just, you're being addressed and they know they're being addressed. So why put an extra label if you don't have to? It's just a natural way of things, just like we naturally breathe. No one has to remind you to breathe. It just is.
Absolutely. So it's a frequency thing is what it is. And some will say, be wary of seducing spirits. Well, you know them by their frequency. If your pineal gland is activated again, your light body is activated, you have a active Merkaba where you can travel freely, you are just going to know what the vibration is of a being. It can't fool you because it is what it is. Again, most people are operating with the bare minimum of senses. And that's something I should probably reiterate again. Most Homo sapiens operate with the bare minimum of senses and abilities that they need to be good little worker bees for the system. And this is right out there in the writings that we get when we look deeper. Some have said, many have said, actually, so the Anunnaki created us. No, the Anunnaki genetically modified the body is what they've done. They've modified the body so that the soul, when it comes into the body, the spirit, it can't operate to the highest degree. Now, other humanoid species that were here in the past, it actually was able to operate to a higher degree. There was a higher degree of connectedness. There was a higher understanding of the oneness of everything. There was a much deeper sense of clarity than what we have now. Because again, when we look to the DNA, and scientists will tell you 90-something% is quote-unquote junk, or well, now they'll say, well, what it is it doesn't appear to be functioning properly. Yeah, that's because it's been turned off. The bare minimum of DNA is kept turned on so that we can be good little worker bees, for the controllers. The reality is that this energy that's coming in right now is turning our DNA on. And the reality is you can turn your own DNA on too if you adopt certain practices like mantras and meditation, yoga and qigong. These things will change your DNA. They'll change your perception. You have to be dedicated to them. You have to prioritize them. This is again why they say, well, really all you got to do to experience heaven is just simply say these words, do one or two little rituals, and you're good. Why do they tell you that? Well, it's so you won't do the real work, so you won't really wake up, and so you'll still be their good little worker bee. This is exactly what goes on here. When we sleep, we are literally traveling around other worlds. We are exploring other possibilities. Most of the universe that we know about is unseen. Again, if you're only relying on what you can see with your two physical eyes, you're missing everything. You're only seeing a tiny little percentage of what really is. 95% of the universe that we understand and know about is not visible. It's not visible. The vast majority is not visible. And again, this is where there is some truth in the Bible, for instance. Let the light of thine eye be single, and thy body will be full of light. And again, light's knowledge. And if your pineal gland, what that biblical quote is saying is, if you have a turned on pineal gland, your whole body is going to be full of light. In other words, your whole body is going to be full of information. Understanding, discernment, you will be able to see for the first time, because we don't really see with our eyes per se. The true seeing, the true gnosis, the knowing, comes from other perceptive abilities, which you can only develop through time and dedication. Getting off of all those substances that they are constantly throwing our way to get you hooked on, to get you addicted to. So every time we lower our frequency and our vibration, we are falling into their trap. Because what we are is we are creators, and we are ourselves, so to speak, gods in training. We are creator gods in training, learning how to control our emotions, learning how to, for again, lack of a better term, learn how to do our own magic in our own way.
And we can, and I think key words very much, it is about growing your energy body. It is about the meditation and mantras and the time that you dedicate to yourself. So important to do the inner work and the healing. One thing, when people turn on that pineal gland and they allow information to come through their body, when there is trauma, and say even a car accident, and emotional trauma, when information flow increases through your body because you're doing certain things, that can create anxiety if you have not dealt with these things, if you have not smoothed out your energy body, or at least brought something that's very chaotic with your energy body into a state of non-chaos, a state of normalcy, a state where everything is functioning properly. So, 90% of the work is working on you, and you do have to prioritize it. You do have to be dedicated. You have to put in the time. There is no shortcuts, but I tell you what, when you make it there, it counts, and it's a blessing.
Absolutely. So you're looking at a picture that feels pretty old, and it's somebody passing on, leaving to the other side. Well, we say the other side, but the reality is it still is part of this side, so to speak. And yet our consciousness and the state of our consciousness at the time of death is critical. It really, really is critical. Again, they use the nonstop war. They use places like hospitals. Dying in a hospital setting, especially if it's at a spot where you've been isolated or removed, from your loved ones, that's traumatic. Whereas somebody that passes naturally in their own bed, in their own home, that is so much better for the soul. It helps the transition. Because we can definitely get trapped. This is the one thing that we see all the time. And, in perhaps ever increasing numbers, we find that there's people, because of a certain process that's happening across the globe, that are enshrouded or in this energy that's clouding and distorting, and it kind of makes it harder to figure out what's happened, what to do, why can't I, let me just share with you. We've had interactions with dozens, if not hundreds, of discarnate beings, or what you would call ghosts. Just so many that I if we were to start to list them, we could come up with, dozens upon dozens of videos talking about different individuals and their journeys. And, recently, for instance, there is the ghost, so to speak. I don't really like to use that word, because it's not. It's there's the consciousness of this young man, for instance, that does like to play with the dogs, and he recently passed on. He's very upset about how he passed on, because he feels he was absolutely tricked, and he left behind a wife and kids, and he's what, 30s, you think? I would say he's in his 30s. And so he does, and he's actually a pretty strong spirit, because he can literally squeak the dog's toys, and the dogs will hear it, and they'll go barking out in the yard. He's done that before. But he understands what we're doing, and so he hangs around. There's a lot of them that do hang around, and when I realize, and when Cindy realizes that there's a quote unquote ghost in the bedroom at night and the lights are out, we don't even get the slightest bit scared. To us, it's no big deal. It's just another night. It's been part of my life, and I know it's been part of Cindy's life, all of my life. Sometimes it has shocked me, and when I was younger, it would scare me to a degree. But again, these people are people. They're just that. They're people, and many of them are very, very confused. Very confused, and there's unfortunately, again, with what's going on with the ouch, it leads to another level of confusion when we are coming out on the other side. Now, it doesn't mean everybody is lost, and what we find is it just simply takes people longer to realize what happened and go through the normal process. Because typically, and it's even referenced again when we were talking about the different yugas, the different ages, whether it was Hindu or Greek mythology, when people leave their vehicles, so to speak, in silver and golden ages, it's gentle. It's just simply like falling asleep, purposely falling asleep, and stepping right on out. And then it's even in the Greek myths that those spirits then are guides, are what we would call spirit guides for those that decide to embody. I mean, that is the reality. So, there is no dogma. There is no, you got to do this. You have to believe in that. No. That's all part of the control system. The reality is our perception shifts because we are multi-body beings, so we just are shedding the most. It's, again, I've used the equivalent of those Russian dolls. You see how those Russian dolls, you're shedding one layer. There's still you. You're still there. You simply are changing your perspective on things. Now, we had a ghost of a little girl, again, to use that term, come to us because she's been trying to get the attention of her mom and her family members. And she saw us and was drawn to us, and she just knew that we would be able to hear and talk to her. So we did. The other night we were talking to her for about 20 minutes and, trying to explain to her what's happening. So we can affect people that have passed on. There's a lot of traditions that allude to this. There are, things such as setting out plates for loved ones that have just passed, even on anniversaries, sending them love. If you do put out a plate of food, and especially live food, things like fruits and berries and vegetables and stuff, and send the intention into it that it be utilized by your loved ones. And you could even just pray and send the intention that you're sending your loved ones healing energy, and that will help them on the other side dramatically.
Mm-hmm. I do know a couple people that we are working with their loved ones on the other side, and they do grow, they do heal, they do function, they do look better, they can change. So all of these questions we ask, it's yes, and yes, you can definitely make a difference for your loved ones, and connect with them too. And one thing I was always kind of curious about, and I asked about it, is like when you do pass away, it's like, who's going to meet you? What do you do? How are things going to work? And I can tell you, no matter where you're at, who you are, when you do pass, you want to stay where you're at until you understand what's happened, because it is like giving birth can be a traumatic event. It's like moving from one world to the next, and such as death. Death is moving from one world to the next. So you want to make sure that you do have an understanding. You are centered. You do know what happened, and then start to kind of piece together what you're going to do. And I can tell you that memories will come back really fast. I know sometimes lived ones, we can't have them at home. They might pass in the hospital, but just them knowing that you're there, your presence is there, that's really going to make a big difference. And I know these days there's certain plagues upon the land and they won't even let people in to see. But if your loved one has that message that you're with them in spirit, it helps.
You know, everything that's done in this world is done with a reason. And so they want to. And again, it doesn't mean that the average person that's in the system, working in the system, doesn't realize. I think most people don't realize that they are being utilized as a tool. Most people don't realize that. Most people wholeheartedly believe that what they're doing is great, high. This is the best they could possibly do in this life. They're serving a huge purpose. They don't understand the natural order of things and how things work. As you're seeing here, a photo that's supposedly of somebody lifting up and out of the body. Again, it's nothing to fear at all, because we've all gone through this multiple times. Most of us have multiple times. Some of us hundreds and thousands of times. We've taken bodies and then left those bodies countless times, countless lives. Why? Because we're eternal. We are consciousness itself. So, we always are. And, obviously, eternity is an awful long time. So you're going to want to have experiences. And that's why these worlds are created. They're created for the experiencer to have something that is different and something that is fun and also a learning experience. Now, think what you do about Yoko Ono, or if you ever did think of Yoko Ono. Probably most of you didn't. But this really says a lot. You may think I'm small, but I have a universe inside my mind. Yes, we all do, and we're all part of that universal consciousness. So there is amazing benefit in training the mind in so many different ways. And this is not something that is given priority in this world, because again, this world's not about that. This world is about utilizing the God spark that's within all of us, the energy that's within all of us, and utilizing it for the benefit of the few. And that's what they do. So, of course, when we look at the whole system, the MEDICAL system, it's all about keeping consciousness low, keeping consciousness in a fear-based existence, keeping us from understanding how the universe, multiverse works. And, of course, they don't want to set us free in any way, shape, or form. They don't want us thinking that we have the creative power within us to create our own reality, to help shape a beautiful, benevolent consensus reality as well. And yet we see, if we really look, we'll see. Here's how meditation reduces inflammation and prevents disease. Again, the body was created to be a vehicle for you. Now, they're in control. They've been in control of this particular density on this particular location, and they've modified as they will. They've tried to modify and dumb down humanity. This is a massive modification that's underway right now, because there's a massive modification going on in a natural way right now. And Source and the creator of this particular universe are utilizing energies cosmically and solar to reignite our DNA, to expand our consciousness, and to allow us to have a richer experience than what we have here now. More like the original intention, because the original intention has been hijacked by this artificial component. So absolutely, we can just sit still, put our intention out there, and literally change our bodies. We really can. And not only that, we can change the outlook on the planet. As you see, research group shows meditation can reduce crime rates. Yeah, there's been numerous studies that have shown that. Absolutely, many studies have been done that show crime rates will drop even when it's just 100 people or 1,000 people. When there might be a city of 100,000 or 1 million, you can still lower the crime rate with positive intent. And so it's so important to understand our power in all this. There is an individual reality which can change at any point in time. I do think when people come to a certain level of self-realization, they can literally decide to shift completely, out of one reality and into another on an individual basis. But then there's many of us that are here to shift the consensus reality to a more positive timeline as well as the individual. This is Max Planck, who is one of the founders, one of the great minds that helped give us quantum mechanics. And he says, I regard consciousness as fundamental. I regard matter as derivative from consciousness. So science will tell you your consciousness is just the result of the body. It's chemical, and electric signals, chemical reactions, electric signals, that's it. That's total BS. As we know, most of what we're given by the controlling power structure is the inverse of the reality. So yeah, consciousness creates the matter. Consciousness brings about the vehicles in the first place. We cannot get behind consciousness. There's nothing that comes before consciousness, in other words. There's nothing that comes before consciousness. Consciousness is. Everything else comes after, and everything else is created by consciousness.
So many people were kept, this information is kept away from us, and it's kept away from us for very good reasons. I need to mention though, like if you are in a place and you're not very happy about where you're at and you don't have any outlook of being able to get out of there, your own individual being, you growing your own light can create your own shielding. Just you. I'm so glad to be talking about this subject because, the more people you can get to join you, the stronger that energy is going to be, and it's going to create a field around you. And if you're someone who just has a really, really chaotic life and things are just constant chaos, if you prioritize yourself, put yourself first, give yourself that 20-30 minute meditation, and yes, it takes time to work up to that, but give that to yourself and then start seeing how things fall into place around you. It simply makes you way more congruent with your surroundings than it was before, because it takes things out of that state of chaos and it puts them in order. But it takes time, and you really got to prioritize. But boy, oh my gosh, it is so worth it. But just you can make a huge difference if you're going to meditate, grow your light, and protect those that are around you, that are close to you. I mean, is it that important? Yes, it is. And it works. Just because we can't see it with our two eyes doesn't make it so, but I've seen enough, and I know enough now. I can see it with all of my eyes. It's that joke. It reminds me, they teased kids in four eyes glasses. I don't know where that came from, but yeah. I mean, it's just something that can be so life changing, and you can see it too. You can watch things change. But when you're meditating, I'm going to tell you now, most likely there's not going to be any magic that happens during the meditation. It's everything after the meditation. It's watching how things fall into place after you do it. That's the magic.
Yeah, and that doesn't mean that it can't happen during too, because I notice I get flashes during, and things. Sometimes there's voices that just pop in, like somebody's talking behind my shoulder, and that's one of the things that I've noticed for years. So everybody's unique in that. When we see the famous double slit experiment from quantum physics again, it lets us know, it gives us that clue that everything that is here is really for us, and ultimately it's by us. So reality's waiting to happen. And see, this is how they steer the reality. This is how they change the history and constantly are rechanging the history, giving us something that's not real, in order to create a future that's not what we want. It's what they want. They want us to create the future that they want, so they're always seeding us with this. And again, when we look to quantum physics, we are all of a sudden hit with the reality that this, on some levels, is mysticism. But what is mysticism? It's just basically, again, uncovering the magic in everything, so to speak. And there is magic, and this universe is magical, and we are heading to a very, very magical place. It also kind of gives us that clue that, yes, this may be just a holographic reality on some level that is not as real as we might think it to be. But then again, it's real because everything in it feels real until you start experiencing some of those glitches and stuff, which gets you questioning the reality of things. But again, we can shift things. We can create all new worlds. It's up to us to change the reality, both as the individual and the consensus. And we do this through educating the masses and reminding them of the power that they have in them. As you look at Dr. Masaru Emoto's water experiments, you could see that in water, when we think about water, is the bringer of life in so many ways. Most of us, our bodies are somewhere between 70 and 80% water. When you're born, it's about 85% water. And then as we get older, we tend to dehydrate a little bit, and we tend to get a little stiffer and more brittle. Again, when we shared the wisdom that we got from he was about 300-year-old Qigong master, when we asked him, well, what was your diet like? And he said, some roots, some herbs, and lots of clean water. That was it. Some roots, some herbs. That's all he ate. And lots of clean water. And he stressed, he said, the water is the most important thing.
Mm-hmm. Oh my gosh, this is, again, another one of my favorite subjects, because this is what really helped me with my awakening, my understanding that water, when you charge it with information, it takes form, and our bodies we're made of water. And a lot of times when we do set up an appointment with people, I tell them, please drink a lot of water because it makes you more conductive. And then the thoughts and the information are then formed from the thoughts and the energy work that we do. I mean, it's so important. And when I learned this, it really helped me mind my thoughts. I mean, it made me want to be sure that I could find a way to make my thoughts more positive, because again, sometimes it's better to see things that are tangible in the 3D, so you can understand how it affects your body, so you can understand how the inner workings are in your body. And if you are always thinking about love, or if you have a positive picture in your mind, that's going to make all the difference in the world about how your body is going to be conducting itself. It's going to have you're programming your whole information field with these thoughts. And you can see, heavy metal music, look at the compassion, the thank you, the wisdom. I mean, these are all very beautiful, beautiful pieces, flakes. I mean, like snowflakes.
So the water structure changes with whatever intent we put into it. That's the key component here. If you asked me 35 years ago what my favorite music was, it would all be pretty heavy stuff. And, I was always, an adrenaline junkie, and it was a slow change. And I think the higher self forced that change because, I was lifting weights like crazy, and I was going to karate, sparring, and all that type of stuff. Very active. And what happened? I blew out 2 discs. It caused me to shift, and all of a sudden, okay, no longer going and sparring at karate, no longer lifting hundreds and hundreds of pounds. No, instead I'm doing Qigong and I'm doing meditation. It's because I was on the wrong path. I wasn't really coming into the alignment with the purpose, and so the higher self put this in front of me. And the higher self would continue to put obstacles in front of me until I get on that path. And, because again, we do have a purpose in each life. And if things are just constantly going wrong, then we're not in alignment with that higher purpose. It's pretty simple. But again, there is another component too to recognize, and that is, as you do awaken, the dark ones will go ahead and they will start to put uh, obstacles in your path, and they will attack you because they don't want to lose a valuable resource.
And, look at the heavy metal, look at the negativity. When we work on people, a lot of times this is what I see, but it's almost like a compressed information that's shoved into that field. And you can do things so simple as charge your water with love. Think of a very precious moment in your life and put your hands over that water and charge it, and you can change the form in it. So there's just so many things we can do, and that can be life-changing on its own. For something more full body, classical music can really repattern us too. But the mantras, that's something we can do anytime, anywhere. Granted, it is better when it's spoken out loud, but it will repattern you.
Absolutely. And so, somebody had said, with all the fracking, how are we going to clean this planet? Oh, she'll clean herself pretty quick. Absolutely. Don't underestimate the consciousness of the planet itself. As again, if we view ourselves as spirit orbs when we leave the body, we're much smaller beings in a sense. We have a lot more to learn, a lot more to achieve, a lot more to do, and a lot more growing to do. Absolutely. So, the mother will cleanse herself, and she has help from the big mother as well. So it won't take long before the earth is clear. And again, we could take part in that by simply putting our intention out there. So, to conclude my thought on the change in me, when I was in my, 42, that's such a key date astrologically, and it's so weird how these things work out. Because again, astrology is the science of light coming to us and interacting with us at certain time frames. When we jump into this matrix, when we jump in is the biggest clue in the world to who we are. And the biggest clue in the world to what do we want to do in this life. And, Cindy is, God, I'm so blessed to have her with me, and I'm so grateful for every single day with her, because it's a wonderful experience. And I do think I manifested her, because I wanted somebody that could understand me. And absolutely, I made a lot of choices that were less than ideal in my life, but this was the best choice I ever, mutual choice, But again, the line of thinking has changed, because when I was 42, all of a sudden I was getting kind of tired of the harsh music. Not that I don't like it in some sense, but I just all of a sudden found myself drifting over towards classical music, Spanish guitar. I absolutely love Spanish guitar. I do love classical as well, and things like jazz, and things like some blues, and more of the softer rock, which I used to kind of like not appreciate as much. I used to like the real adrenaline stuff. But see, our consciousnesses grow, and it's said that we don't really mature astrologically until we're at what we might think is a fairly advanced stage.
Mm-hmm. Well, for parents, I'll do a chart for their children only because these are things that they can watch out for, and there's also a lot of strength that's in there that can be fortified as that child grows up. But personally, to do a chart, they really don't recommend it until probably right around 25 to 28, because you're still developing. These planets are still molding you. They're still kind of harnessing you, and you are learning so many lessons. So you might hear something about yourself, and if you're just not old enough, you're going to say, oh, no way, I don't even remotely act like that. Then boom, something happens in your life, and oh boy, did you change. But that usually takes, after 25.
So you can see again, how we can affect positive change. We can start to transform the world right now. Some will bring up this guy on the lower right and say, again, history's distorted, and he was actually beloved by his people. Well, he was beloved by some of his people, but we can see his energy. So, we know he was no angel. Absolutely no angel. And we can see where he is now, and where he is a dark place. And, it's most definitely, it's just obvious, because all you got to do is be able to read the frequency of a being, be able to, and you could develop this too, where you could simply feel the energy emanating from even a photo, and kind of know where that person was. It's the same thing as water holds. As water holds a certain frequency, and we can charge these frequencies. Individuals, again, the body is mostly water. We can change our own frequency. So why do we stress that Sanskrit mantras are so important? It's because you're reprogramming yourself. Mantras are a way of you reprogramming yourself with basically information that's coming to us in golden ages. These are so powerful, so healing. They connect you to these amazing frequencies. And again, if we look at Sanskrit itself with 50 unique sounds, and we look at the Taiji pole, we look at the 7 main chakras, they have petals. There's 50 of those. And so when we're plucking into place, or putting into place, these different sounds and frequencies that come from the mantras, it's like moving tumblers in a lock and unlocking the chakras, unlocking the energy potential, and allowing the life force to flow through us and to cleanse and purify us.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of things we can do on our own, and granted, it does help. If a lot of people need help, and there's help to be had out there. And I remember when I got into the tuning forks, that's just something I innately knew, that's how we change our frequency, that's how we change our vibration. But again, mantras that can do something very similar. Now, you can't change your frequency and vibration overnight. It won't take 1 or 2 mantra sessions to do it, because think, how long did it take you to get to this space of unhappiness and chaos? It took day after day after day of tons and tons of chaos, having to put out 10 or 15 fires every day, that stress just being at its height, for so many years. And pretty soon we just start to break down. We're a wreck physically, emotionally. So when you start doing mantras, you have to think you need to give yourself that time, that quiet time. And then that's the energy that needs to build day after day after day. But every day that you do it, just know you're one day closer to a more peaceful space.
And every time you do them, you are definitely pushing out dark energies that can't stand them. And that's key too. So if you look at the Imagine by John Lennon, and you look at Air on a G string by Bach, if you don't like classical music, and again, we do change over time, stuff like Imagine, it's the intent that's behind it. That was, a beautiful, peaceful song with positive intent. So again, it yields a beautiful result. Everything that you put into your body, your food and your drink, you should charge with positive intention. You could even do things like keep, water in a container, and you could write down health, healthy, love, peace. And that works as well. Put that on the container, and that will work. So I'll have all the links for you guys. As always, there is, again, one universal mind, and each one of us are an aspect of that universal mind. We are connected. We are all connected. We are all part of the one, of Source. And it has to be that way, because, it's only natural that, again, if there is such a thing as an omniscient, omnipotent, omnipresent, and it's in you. If it wasn't in you, it wouldn't be the ultimate. And so, that potential lies within each of us. And again, this one was on how much stuff is there in the universe, and the fact that, we only can really know, see, measure about 5%. So that leads the vast majority of everything. It's just out there. It's just out there for exploration. And Arthur Stanley Eddington quotes, "The mind stuff of our world is, of course, something more general than the individual conscious minds. It's difficult for the matter-of-fact physicists to accept the view that the substratum of everything is of a mental character, but no one can deny that the mind is first, and the most direct thing in our experience and all else is remote inference. Absolutely. And the mind is not the brain. Again, the mind is not the brain. People have been brain dead, quote unquote, and had the experience of being out of body and seeing themselves. And again, people have died and come back. So the universe itself is the creation of the mind. The universe exists inside the mind, as the flower exists inside the seed. I think that is a great way of looking at things. And so this is really cute. This is a little brother right here helping out a little sister. There's sometimes when we are going to be scared and afraid, and we are going to need a little pick-me-up. And we need to be there for each other and understand that. And it could be, that the person that needs to pick me up has actually passed on, is on the other side. You might sense it. Many of us sense when our loved ones are around us. My father came to my mother, just after he had passed, and it literally scared her. She saw him there, in the doorway to the bedroom, briefly, and just didn't know what to make of it, because again, she was brought up Catholic, but she is having a good time on the other side, and she is probably going to reincarnate shortly, and probably in the Far East.
Mm-hmm. There's a lot of information we can glean from our loved ones when we just take the time to go within and reach.
Absolutely. So may you be blessed by the true creator of this universe. Keep your eyes on the big prize, and that is of manifesting a beautiful new perspective for the earth and all those that are upon the earth, in the earth, around the earth, to share with each other.
Indeed. Source bless and namaste.
Namaste.